Hi there, I'm Tim Irvine.
And I'm Stacy Irvine. Welcome to the Totum Wellness Podcast.
We are very happy to welcome Nikki Fraser to our podcast today. Nikki, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's
Pleasure.
I'm super excited.
You've been in the health and wellness business for over 20 years now, focus on personal training, group training, and then more recently, you've just started a gig with Loom Women in Health, which is fantastic. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and really helping that group with all things assessment, movement assessment, those sorts of things. You come at it from an academic perspective. You got 2 master's degrees, which in my world is better than 1 PhD.
Wow. Oh, I don't know about that.
That's just what I'm saying. So health psychology, and then very recently, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
In kinesiology.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is really great because I didn't actually know there was master's programs in kin.
It's pretty new, I think, because we did ours many years ago, too many years ago to talk about, but it wasn't an option for us. It was physiology, biomechanics. You had to pick a specialty. So to have a master's in kinesiology is really cool and a great development.
It was super exciting. Yeah. It was nice when the program came out. I was like, oh, that was made for me.
You're a lover of many sports and being active in general. Do you have a sport that is like if you could only do one, you had to pick one?
Oh, that's brutal. Nope, I can't pick one. I honestly can't. Like I would say, I don't know, swimming in the summer and snowboarding in the winter.
Lake swimming?
Any
kind of swimming?
Both. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if it to encapsulate this idea for you as your passion being helping individuals be their best athlete.
Yes. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
This is not necessarily somebody that's a competitive athlete, just you believe that everyone has an athlete within them and you try to bring that out.
Truly. Yeah.
What does that look like?
Actually, it's one of the reasons why I went back to school, because been working as a trainer for the last 20 years. And so there was a lot I realized I didn't know. And so it was always a little frustrating that way. And I really wanted to increase my scope of practice and my understanding of what's happening in the body and how far can we push people who aren't trying to push themselves for performance. When I was studying, I focused on high performance, and hopefully I get the designation. I'm still waiting to hear, but I should, because not necessarily because I want to work with high performance athletes, but I want to be able to take that training and bring it to Gen Pop. Or I also coach youth swimming, and I want to be able to bring that type of training to them as well, even though they are unlikely, or I don't know, maybe they're likely to ever reach high levels. But I truly believe every person is an athlete. They just don't, a lot of people don't believe it. And so regardless of what they look like or how, I'm not the best at that. I don't really adhere to that. I think we can really push people to be their best athletic self. And as a coach or a trainer, to bring that out in them and help them feel that inside, that they can reach their highest level.
This is so exciting. And I love that attitude that you bring to this. I think it's a really wonderful way to think about human bodies. And we've all been given essentially the same anatomy, the same muscles, and we all use it in different ways. But no matter what, you can work to enhance or feel better in your skeleton and your muscles. And I think that's such a wonderful way. It's one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you here. I have many reasons I'm very excited to have you here, but that is one. And I think for all our listeners, this is going to be such a great episode to tune into, because you have had a long career in this and you've seen many different things, from elite athletes all the way to older people trying to stay fit and trying to fit all these things into their life. And one of the most important things to me that you're bringing to the table now is that you've just finished school and you are really into the research. And even when we were talking about the topics, you just sent us like 20 references for what you're talking about. That is a first on this podcast. No one has ever sent us references before.
Amazing. Okay.
And we come from an academic background, but we've been removed from it. And that is why we always love to, at Totum, we bring students in because I know that they're in it and I know that they're watching new research and paying attention to things. I also know that our industry, health, wellness, has grown so far into so many directions. And we have so many armchair scientists throwing in their opinions on social media. And I think that for the general person who doesn't have a background in this, they're being pulled in so many different directions as to what should they do, how should they do it. Today, we're going to talk about assessment techniques, and this area has exploded. We've got the Apple Watch, we've got Oura rings, we've got Whoop bands, we've got DEXA, force plate, blood work, glucose monitors.
Data.
I could go on and on. What I would love to talk to you about is based on what you've just been studying. What do you think are the top areas that we should be paying attention to for assessment?
First of all is, I know it's not accessible to everybody, but the gold standard for body composition is a DEXA scan. So I'm super lucky and fortunate to now have access to that. And I'm using that to assess clients at Loom Women in Health Clinic. And one of the interesting things for me, I'll explain what the DEXA scan does, but what I found really interesting is I come from a generation of you have to be skinny and invisible sideways and whatever. And so, and also always focusing on this number on the scale, which as a person, as a woman and a young woman, of course I put value into what I was seeing there, right? So, but it's just, it's not telling you enough. So then you get your DEXA scan, you've got a body composition, and the three numbers that, it does give you quite a few metrics, which is great, but the three numbers that we're mostly concerned about at Loom and that I think are really important to look at because we have the power to move the needle on them. One is relative skeletal mass index, or it's also called appendicular. So it's either ALMI or RSMI. Also helps to give the overall bone mineral density. So what we're doing over at Loom is we're not doing the diagnostic BMD, but it's giving us an idea of like, should that person need a diagnostic?
Right. And you're not doing spot specific, like you're not doing hip,
total body,
spine. You're giving those total body numbers, which is great.
And so given a person's height, that total body bone mineral density will be above or below or at average, something like that?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So they gives like a T
so
score.
It's a ballpark.
Exactly. Yeah. And it has normative data, little graph. Actually, the printout that you get is it's quite nice and it's easy to read. So it's nice even for the clients to look at even if they don't have a science background.
I love this, and I don't want to interrupt, but I think it's important for our listeners to understand that where you started this conversation, which I think is so valuable for all women to understand, as you said, I have a generational influence on that number on the scale. And that to me, I've struggled with this for a long time, as a female athlete as well. And we've been talking to many female Olympians. We had beach volleyball players on here where the aesthetic of what they look like on top of what they're doing competitively, it's so huge, right? And with social media, it's becoming more huge. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that number on the scale means more than it should. And then to tie in the bone density, you could have a woman who has very good bone density, who looks the same. So say we had two women that, weighed around 130 pounds, and we could have one female that looked a certain way and had really terrible bone mineral density. Her weight on the scale would be less versus a very healthy bone mineral density on the scale on our other female. And we could say that, the scale number would be higher, but it would be because her bone density is great. And this is why that number is so crucial, that you understand what is the scale made up of. And we haven't even hit lean body mass yet. So continue. But I think it's really interesting.
That's exactly the point for sure. And if I had a dream for every woman who had that sort of, cognitive state just to be able to have a body composition via the DEXA scan, because it's giving you some concrete numbers. So the bone mineral density gives us the overall picture. I mentioned the RSMI, and then we're also looking at visceral adipose tissue. So the DEXA does give you an overall body fat percentage, which can be pretty jarring. For whatever reason, we walk around with numbers in our head that we think we should be or we shouldn't be. And also, depending on your ethnicity as well, that's going to change of what's, one person might be really high, but they're super healthy. And so I don't love that number as a tool for health, like as an indicator for health. But the visceral adipose tissue, we know the fat in and around our organs has risks associated with it, with metabolic conditions or cardiovascular conditions. So that's the health risk there. So it gives us that number. And it's been really neat to see women. On one hand, people come in and I feel almost sad because they're like, "Oh, I'm nervous," and I'm like, "What? Like, there's nothing to be nervous about. We're just going to be looking at numbers, and this is exciting because now you get to know what's happening in here." And then, similar to how I felt when I had my first DEXA scan, they see these numbers and they're like, "Oh, okay, great." Or even if it's not something where they maybe think they should be or want to be, it becomes a conversation. Well, how do I change that? And so it's much more positive. Like, what can I do to? And of course, then it's all about exercise and resistance training. And so that's a really fun conversation to have.
And that first metric you mentioned, is that lean body mass? Is that another way of describing that?
Exactly. Yeah.
So we've got lean body mass, bone mass, and fat mass.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Yeah.
And you're able to parcel out the visceral fat.
Yeah.
Which is the visceral fat that is around, again, in case you missed it, it's around our organs. And that fat, although we cannot see it, has a bigger impact on our overall health and longevity. And that's why, and I know that not all DEXA machines can parcel that out. It's the new ones that have the ability to do that and provide that really valuable number to us, because we talk about things like cellulite and what this looks like. And you see on Facebook, the belly fat ads come up constantly. That's not what we're necessarily looking at. We care more about what's inside and about what's around your organs from a health perspective. That's wonderful. Lean body mass. Tell me what you're finding there. I'm fascinated.
It's really interesting because I think actually the clients have been surprised as well. And I've only seen a few people. So it's been a small, like a couple of handfuls of people that I've taken
Small
people through.
sample size.
Yes, very small sample size. So, and really they've been by and large very healthy people. So I haven't had to have any difficult conversations in terms of sarcopenia risk which, as you know, is loss of muscle mass as we age. So, but even if somebody comes with a number that we need to really dial in, you can move that number. We can increase that number and improve it at any age and at any stage, and no matter where you're at in your fitness level. So, yeah, mostly I have to admit, like, it's been a very happy place, and a lot of the women I've seen so far, they're like, they'll describing themselves as type A people, and they're like, "How high can I get it?"
That's awesome.
I'm like, well, I don't know, go bananas. But I mean, let's, I'm just telling you that you're not you have no risk that's associated with losing lean muscle mass. But, you're 47 or you're, 25 or whatever. We want to make sure we're sure, let's add on to that if we can. And if not, let's keep it like at least maintain where you're at.
So it's interesting because this idea of the DEXA scan right now, it's either being done within the medical system for a medical reason, or people who are choosing to get it done are paying anywhere from $100 to probably $190 to have it done. My personal feeling is, knowing about it, that you should probably get a measurement somewhere around 25 or 30 years old, because you're at your peak at that point, right? Somewhere in that window, you're at your maximum bone mineral density, theoretically. And then every 5 years, have a look at it again. So it's in my opinion, a super valuable metric to have a look at on an ongoing long-term basis, so that you know what's actually happening. Because just like any kind of artery degradation, buildup in the arteries, you don't know it's happening until something bad happens. And
Exactly.
then you're like,
yeah.
Jesus, what do I do now? So
Yeah.
if you can prevent that, it's great. The other thing I would say, my guess is at some point, this will become part of our medical system, just like you hop on the scale or a BMI measurement, which is, as we all know, not a great measurement, but having a metric that's easy to assess, universal, that is really helpful for health. This sounds like it's a really important one.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And it's so easy to interpret. Like the scientists decades ahead of us made it really easy for us now to be able to explain it to a person. And it, it takes about 6 minutes for the scan to happen. And then you have these super valuable numbers. And it's great to have that baseline for sure. Yeah.
And I love the validity, reliability of this machine. Being in this business, we have evaluated many other machines. We've had bod pods, we've had, you name it, we've had it, bioelectrical impedance, all these methods. And here's the problem with those is that you assess someone, and first of all, we all know the number they care about. It's like, what's my percentage of body fat? Okay, so that's a really distracting thing. And we know that in our industry, that has been used as a sales tactic for decades, right? They hook you up to this thing. The number's not even accurate. And they're like, wow, look at how fat you are, really, is what they're saying. And then you could go work a year and come back and get it tested again. And you could get a totally different reading, but it wouldn't be accurate. And that was always our hesitation. And the reason we're very excited about these DEXA machines is that I said, I can't be remeasuring someone and having an inaccurate number come and then try to explain that to them. Oh, you've just spent money and I've just given you a number that isn't correct. And I think that is one of the things that is so exciting about this DEXA machine. And it's going to be a great development for all of us. I've even said to our trainers, I think it's motivating and I think it holds lots of people accountable, right? If you didn't get the numbers you want, then you look back at your year and you say, what happened? Because lots of times we will have clients or athletes saying, I'm not getting results. And you can say, okay, well, let's look at this. You were injured here. You were sick here. You traveled on this time. And people forget about that. They get to, the next testing point and they're like, well, why didn't that work for me? But you need to have a really good measurement. So I love that. Okay. So we all love DEXA.
So yeah, if we're talking narrowing down on sort of 3 essential assessments, DEXA is one.
DEXA is one. What else? What else are you loving right now?
So I think grip strength is incredibly valuable. It's a valid measure of our overall strength. It's used now currently all the way through back to, I don't even know when it started. So when we have this number of, let's say the RSMI number, so this is actually something that I'm curious about how this continues to play out, because I've had people who are at sort of on the cusp of the RSMI where I'm like, we should make sure that you're building muscle. Like this needs to be part of your routine. And generally those people are not including resistance training. And so it's not surprising, but again, not unhealthy numbers.
Okay. Just for the audience again, RSMI, can you just,
yes.
Yeah.
So that's the lean muscle mass. So we're just like the muscle mass number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But every person I've seen, again, it's been small handfuls, their grip strength has been great. So like above normative data. And again, they've been all healthy people I've been dealing with. So I can give them this RSMI number and say, but your strength is great. Like this is a very valid measure of your overall strength. I can say I'm not actually concerned. I would like you to have more muscle for metabolic reasons. And there's other reasons why we want to make sure that we're building muscle, maintaining muscle. But I'm not seeing a risk of injury or loss of quality of life or that sort of thing because of the overall strength is really solid. Hands down, one of the best measurements you can use.
And easy and accessible.
So easy. It's easy for the client. It's easy for the coach. It's easy for the assessor, like whoever. It's so easy. It's quick. It's done. And we have the normative data on all kinds of populations. So it's a great metric. So.
And I know that when we do it, it's a little bit, you've got to compare it to somebody else to get a sense of, or like 5 people, because every once in a while we'll do it at the gym. We'll just have it out. And everyone's like, well, I want to know what I'm
everybody
at.
Totally.
We
Yeah.
use it at like trade shows too, because everybody wants to pick it up and grab it.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, you've just been through the research on this because I know you did a lot of background before you decided on these tests. Do you use any special technique with it? Are you doing like arm above, squeezing down? What are you doing?
It's a good question. Very good question. So I'm using a technology, like a certain brand technology. It's called VALD, VALD. There's a number of ways, like you said, you can do it up here, you can do it with your arm. And so I try to keep things really simple for myself, especially because, well, at the clinic, I only have a certain amount of time with a client. So let's be just simple.
Efficient.
So I'm using just a neutral grip. That's it. Everybody's
Neutral
doing the
grip,
same.
hand down by your side.
Yeah.
And you're doing both hands.
Both hands, I do them
twice and squeeze as hard as you can.
And the cool thing about that, this is one of the nice things about using technology, is that I don't actually have to go back through my papers and look through the normative data because it pops right up immediately on the iPad, and it shows for that person's gender, age, gen pop, where they are they percentile normative data, like within a range or above or below. So it's incredible. Yeah, it's like magic.
That is fantastic.
That's great. I really like that idea. Okay, so that's two.
That's two, and you're using the force plate.
We are using force plates as well. So that really the next assessment using force plates or not using force plates would be functional movement, which I know you both are really into. So we were having a conversation before the podcast that it's so important still for us to be using our human eyes, right? So when I first see a client and I'm introducing myself and I'm immediately assessing how are they getting up out of their chair and how are they walking and are they holding their back, or so there's little tiny cues that we're picking up as soon as we meet a client for the first time. So that's informative. And then the assessments that I'm taking people through, not all of these assessments, but depending on the person, these are the assessments I have to choose from. So doing a balance assessment, and I am using technology, the VALD technology for all of these, but you don't have to. If you're a trainer or a coach, you can't afford this technology, or you don't have access to it, it doesn't matter. There are valid tests like the Y balance test that you can use with your clients it's a valid way of assessing their balance and then knowing their postural stability. So anyway, we're doing a balance test and double leg or single leg, just depending on the person, a squat assessment. And I find that one the most informative because we're really watching all the joints and what's mobile, what's not mobile. Are the knees going in? Are the knees going out? And can they remain with their chest up? Because lots of people can go down low.
Yes.
Let's not stare at the ground.
Yeah.
And then we're also doing, depending on the population, we'll do counter movement jumps, which is jumping as high as you can, the vertical, and isometric mid-thigh pull. And then depending on the population, if you're unable to do a squat assessment, we can do sit to stand. So that's sitting in the chair, up to standing, and then sitting down again. But again, if you don't have access to this technology, there's valid measures of sit to stand that you don't need any equipment at all. So, and the ACSM has all of those guidelines for you.
I love all of that. And having done probably over 1,000 assessments in my lifetime, I get exactly what you're saying, that we can't ignore, the technology is great, but we can't ignore our eyes. Not only that, our ears, because I will find that someone comes in and as they're doing something, you'll see them shift, or you'll see they'll be like, oh, okay, that didn't work, or whatever. And then you'll say, okay, what? Oh, I forgot to tell you. I broke this leg 3 years ago. I didn't do the rehab properly. And that's such valuable information. And if you hadn't asked them to do a squat or something like that, you might not have found that out. Yeah. And then you would have put them on a program ignoring that. So I think that there's many things that come out of this assessment, and we live in such a busy time that even just taking the time to look at ourselves, to look at our posture, to talk about it is kind of rare. And it's a bit of a privilege where we are definitely not getting it in our current healthcare system. That's not part of what, when you go to see your GP or something, you're not having really those conversations. It's only if something is in extreme pain or you need a medication for something, that's what's being assessed there.
Yeah.
So I love that you are discovering this. Is there anything that you're finding interesting or unique? I'm sure you jumped on the force plate and did a bunch of things.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. The only measurement I don't like for myself was balance. I'm like, you can't muscle your way through a good balance. So I'm still trying to figure out why my balance isn't perfect. So
Interesting. And is that side to side single? Like, is it a different side to side, or is it just general?
It's just general. I'm like, I don't like that percentile. So
that is so interesting.
Anyway, I did sprain both of my ankles multiple times throughout my life.
Right.
So it's like, there's that. So
and you're a swimmer, and balance standing on one leg doesn't transfer a lot to swimming.
Right. Yeah.
So it makes sense. The picture makes sense.
Yeah. But it is a lot. Like it is super fun. That's the other thing, is the numbers are so fun to know and to play with, and know where you're at with your age group and the population that you're part of.
And what to work on.
Totally.
And that's I think, from a health standpoint, is really where it comes back to, is you want to know this information so that it's not about ego. It's about, what do I need to pay attention to so that my health is going to be better in the big picture.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got DEXA for those reasons we talked about. Grip strength and movement quality
with force plate, if you have access to a force plate.
Yeah. But getting somebody to give you some sense of, how are you moving? What's the quality of your movement like, along with that data? Is that right?
Yeah. And I think too, probably you're talking about barriers to things that, they're not comfortable doing things. I think that's a lot of the conversations that sometimes we have, is they're nervous about being in a weight room because they had low back pain, or
for sure.
Right. And then when they're doing a squat, lots of times I'll hear like, oh, this knee bothers me when I do a squat, or things like that. And I think that's why these assessments are great, because you can reassure them that no, you want to be doing the squat. That's how we deal with this challenge.
Poor movement
that you have. More
exactly.
movement.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Blood work, glucose. Is there anything else? Like, so say if you had a wish list. So we've got the 3 that you need. And then if you had a wish list, what else would you add? Like, even for yourself, like, what would you want to know?
That's super easy. So your VO2 max.
Oh, like 100%. Okay, great. Yeah, we love that too.
And even again, in order to have a accurate VO2 max, you have to go into a facility that has the equipment to be able to measure the gas exchange. Not accessible for everybody, but there are very valid sub-max tests that you can do, like, by yourself. So if you don't have a coach, you don't have whatever, like, for example, if you want to Google Cooper test, it's a very valid measure of measuring your own VO2 max. You don't have to have anybody around. Nobody has to know what your number is. And now, thank you, ChatGPT, you can go in and say, I did a Cooper test. You can Google it. Like, what is a Cooper test?
So cool. This is such good information.
And it'll do the calculation for you. So that if doing formulas, it's not super complicated, but I don't like doing math when I don't have to. So I'm not going to. And like, I've put my own clients' sub VO2 max numbers and they're like, tell me what is. And again, the normative data is out there. It's so easy to Google. So that I would say out of everything, if every single person who's listening does sub VO2 max, like a Cooper test, on a 6-month basis, because that is a massive indicator of your cardiovascular risk, your metabolic, like it is an incredible biomarker, and it's so important to know. And again, and you can move the needle on it. So if you're already high and it's the normative data says, okay, you're good within your population range, and you don't like it and you're a little competitive, fine, go for I have ways to improve that too. But if it's a concerning number, you really need to look at it, because you can do things to change that so you can have better health now and in the future, for sure.
And if you had that number, then you literally plug it into ChatGPT and say, where do I stand? I'm this age and gender.
Yeah.
Where do I stand compared to norms?
I don't know if chat is giving accurate normative data.
That's fair.
But Google does.
Yeah.
Like it'll come up like the
It can put
ACSM. You can find it. It's so easy to find.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We don't have to invest in the $10,000. What did our famous doctor use the other day? There's one that you can go out
The
for.
VO2 Master.
VO2 Master.
Yes. Yeah. It's very cool.
It is.
But you don't have to have it.
You don't have to have that.
No.
That's really, really interesting. And I agree that is such a good measurement to have.
Well, I think your point is a great one. Keep it accessible. Like all the things you've talked about, you provided some ideas of how to at least get a ballpark of where you're at. DEXA is obviously a little bit tougher because of the type of measurement that it is. But I think it's important, the message for people, and based on what you've said, is get some fundamental information about these essentials so that you can make your own decisions about where to go. Because it's way easier to make a decision and affect change when you know why.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You need to know your why. Otherwise, you're just walking around in the dark.
If you're not assessing, you're guessing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a famous quote in our nerdy industry.
So good.
I do think though too, it's motivating for people. And even if you are able to get to some of these more advanced tests and then you use the Cooper protocol during the year, where am I at?
For sure.
Right? Because like a direct MBO2, we all know is not fun.
No,
it's not something like, wow, I'm so excited.
I actually like it.
Yeah. Well, maybe for you, maybe for both of you.
Most people know.
You're cardio monsters. Both of you would probably enjoy it. Tim loves it. He always wants to do it because he scores really high. For people like me who are like sprinters, strength is our thing.
That would be brutal.
I dread it.
Yeah.
I dread it.
Yeah.
And so the Cooper sounds much more, I like the idea I can do it in private and
totally
get my results. And then I can build on those results. Yeah. I love that idea. It's great.
Yeah.
Nikki, this is awesome. Great to have these essential assessments to pay some attention to. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Totum Wellness Podcast. Please follow us on Apple, Google, or Spotify and leave a 5-star review and comment. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel and please spread the word to family and friends.